welcome to It's All Happening In. Today I am thrilled to have our guest, the founder and director of a non-for-profit here in Melrose that does a great service for the community. Please welcome Kristin Thorp of SDM Foundation.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is very fun for me to do. Anything that gets our name out in the community is a good thing. SDM Foundation's mission is to help non-technical people use technology. That's a really, really broad mission. We take that to mean everything from helping older people use their phones to helping people trying to get back into the job market, learn how to do Excel. We say non-technical can be anything from a programmer who's actually trying to do something new, like make a website, to an older person who's just coming in with an iPad and never used anything before. So we do mostly one-on-one appointments with people so that they can attend to exactly what they want to do. They bring their own equipment if they have it, they use our equipment if they don't. We have a variety of associates who work with them, and we help people use their technology.
Are you aware of any non-for-profit that operates in the same way that you do with your focus?
Right. So I looked into it a lot when I was first starting SDM Foundation and deciding what our model was going to be. Mm-hmm. And there are some places around the country, there are none locally that I know of, but there are places around the country that have lessons and people can sign up that are geared more toward the elderly. There's a place called Senior Planet in New York City. We're a little unique for a variety of reasons, and one of them is that we're free. Every single thing we do is free. We are all paid staff, and we don't charge, we don't take grants, we don't take donations. That's quite unique and really a wonderful thing that most nonprofits can't.
It is.
Can't
right. I totally agree. The fact that people, maybe they're not in a good financial position, but yet they can still partake in the services that you provide.
We feel really strongly that although some people certainly could afford our services, and it's funny when sometimes people will get to the end of an hour and then they'll turn to us and say, okay, so what do I owe you for that? And I think to myself, you didn't ask before we started, but I don't think that very many people would come as often, and some people wouldn't come at all if we had to charge. So we feel very, very fortunate that we don't have to.
For our audience, we put together some footage of SDM Foundation, which is right on Main Street there. It's 465 Main Street. And before we get into it further, let's look at some of the footage. What is the square footage in SDM?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't actually know. It's a small shop. We have 3 tables where we can do one-on-ones. We have a small seating area that's a little less formal. And then we have seating at the bar for 6 or so, and my office. It's not big.
The reason why I ask is that you make tremendous use of the space that you have there.
Thank you.
It seems probably a lot bigger than maybe it is in reality.
I think that I had some design help, including my husband, who's an architect. So
that's right. Oh,
he had a good view.
That's good. Now, did he work for free or did he charge you?
He did not charge me, but I did. So he gave me the ideas and did a general rough sketch, and then I did hire a designer to actually help me pick out the furniture.
Now, you had sent me a picture, I believe. Was that directly before any work had been done?
Yes, so the shop was the Boston Candle Company before us.
Okay.
And so we left what we could. We left the bar and and the flooring and things like that. We replaced the lighting, we took out the shelves, and the rest we changed. But we kept what we could.
So it was a candle
Yeah,
shop.
so the Boston Candle Company was a shop where you could go and either buy a candle in one of maybe 100 different scents, or you could actually make your own candles. What she said when she needed to move on was that her business, she realized, was less oriented toward a retail shop and more oriented toward wholesale. A company would buy 200 candles for some event they were having. So she had trouble keeping the retail space open. We were very lucky because there were very few spaces available in Melrose at the time, and my view was always that we would be in Melrose.
And the time being 2016. To give people a little perspective here, you had put together some statistics back for 2018 as part of your newsletter, and what I'm reading here is that in the year of 2018, you had 308 clients, about an average 13 one-on-one hours a day, over 3,600 appointments within the year. You have over 550 newsletter subscribers. You have likes on social media. I mean, this is clearly a very popular spot for those who know of it.
It really is. And it's grown just in such an amazing way. When we started, it was the summer of 2016. Including myself, there were 3 employees. There was a high school student for the summer, and Janet Nevin and I. And in the beginning, I think we averaged about 10 people a week. And we would be sitting there with each other, hoping someone would come in. We might even go out on the sidewalk. But I kept saying, don't worry, they'll come. And because we don't need to charge people to pay our rent and our salaries, we really could just be relaxed. Mm-hmm. By the fall, we'd had a couple of articles in the local papers. And by the end of the year, we were probably averaging 8 people a day. Mm-hmm. And now, as you say, we're averaging more like 13 people a day.
Tell me something. I think we had talked before. You had told me that I think you grew up in Minnesota, right?
Yes, just outside of Minneapolis. So I went to the University of Minnesota, met my husband there. We got married when we graduated. He took the long route, so we were there for a few more years after that. And then in '84, we moved out here. We thought, what better time to try somewhere new? If you're ever going to move, do it now. You're young, you don't own a house, you don't have kids. And we came out in '84. We both got jobs. Took us a little while to like the area, but we did eventually fall in love with the Boston area. We owned a condo in JP for a while. And then we had kids, and we decided when they were getting almost to school age that we probably didn't want to have them go to school in the Boston public schools. And we're very, very strong public school proponents. So we looked around and we ended up in Melrose, and that was in 91.
That was in 91, okay.
And our kids have been in the Melrose public schools, played baseball, lacrosse, hockey, Cub Scouts, done it all.
Sure. So you met your husband in college, and you had stayed there a little bit after undergrad, and then decided now it's time to move.
Yep.
And do you have family in Boston?
No, we don't. We actually had 2 friends here, and that was it. Because my husband's an architect, the areas that we were thinking about were Chicago, Boston, Seattle, and he came out here first just to look, and that was the time you flew out, you walked around with your resume in your hand, you looked in newspapers, you knocked on doors, and he got a job offer, and he said, this process is so horrible, I'm not doing this anywhere else. So I put in my notice at my work, and we loaded our U-Haul and moved out.
So, you drove. So that was...
Yes, we drove.
Now, had this been the first time you've ever been to Boston? Was the first time you drove out there?
Yes.
So what were your kind of expectations around the 80s, 80?
This was 84, yep.
So what were your kind of expectations driving up to the city? And
So it was very confusing. And so we lived on the Fenway when we first moved here.
Mm-hmm.
And looking for an apartment was not like anything we had ever experienced before. I mean, the fact that we had to empty our checking account in order to get an apartment, first, last, damage deposit, realtor fee.
Not much has changed.
This was Labor Day weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and we're trying to find an apartment in Boston. I mean, we just didn't know. So we got an efficiency apartment on the Fenway. Every time we moved our car, we would have an argument and get lost, and we didn't want to move it because we couldn't park it anywhere, and it was really it was a big transition.
Sure.
On the other hand, we both walked to work, and we loved that, and because we lived in town, we got to know the city really well, and it's a great walking city, which we loved to do. So it had a lot going for it.
So your first job in Boston
Yeah.
has a lot to do with the beginning of SDM Foundation.
Yes.
So this is 1984,
Yep,
and you opened SDM Foundation in 2016.
yep,
And these two events are related.
totally
So
tied
how are they
together.
related?
When I was looking for a job in 1984, you used the newspaper at the time, and I answered an ad in the paper at a software company. They were looking for an office manager, and I applied for that and met the people that owned the company, and they said, "You're not really an office manager, but you seem pretty smart." And so they hired me to do some development work. We were working on a requirements analysis project.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked there for 3 years until Stuart, one of the owners, and the other co-owner sold the company. And when he did, Stuart asked me if I wanted to keep working on the project we were working on. And I said, yeah. At the time, I was pregnant with my first child. And so having a little flexibility was a good thing. And so in the fall of '87, they sold the company, and I started working for Stuart independently.
But before you go there, what did the company do?
So the company that Stuart owned sold a product that at the time was called a fourth generation programming language. So it was a product that a business or a town could use to program their own accounting system or their own library system or fundraising, or it was used for many different things.
Sure.
And what I was doing there with Stuart was working on sort of a front end to that, which would help a business person come up with their specs. So if you were the accountant, it would help you say, what does your general ledger look like? And what kind of journal entries do you use? And what kind of reports do you want to see? And all those things. At the time, this was really quite remarkable. There was no QuickBooks. There was no, off-the-shelf software of this kind didn't really exist.
Sure.
So Stuart's focus was always on helping the business user do what they wanted to do, not focusing on what the software could do. So that's what I was doing there.
But so
Yeah,
to
go
set
ahead.
the scene, this is 1984.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you told people that this is what you do for a living, that I work in computers, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a rarity at the
It
time,
was pretty
right?
cool.
It was cool. It was
Yes.
considered cutting edge,
Yes.
and there weren't that many people in that industry at the time.
Right.
Not only that, it seems like you're working on a piece of software and application front end development, kind of way ahead of its time.
That's what
To
it
do that
felt
kind
like.
of forward thinking like that.
That is what it felt like. I had a dumb terminal on my desk at home and would dial up to the office computer, and when people saw it, that was really cool. I mean, people just didn't have stuff like that.
Now, was it the ones where you actually put the phone on the
Of
device?
course it was.
Oh my god.
It was a real modem, and you put your actual handset
So you took the
on.
rotary phone and you dialed the number.
Okay, I think we had a push button phone.
Oh, you had a push button phone, okay. And then you dialed the number and then
Yes.
you literally
And
put it
then
on
you-
a device.
And you heard that noise. Yeah.
Now, were you also have shoulder pads and big hair at the time in the 80s where you would light your computer with
I was never well, maybe shoulder pads, but I was never a big hair. I was from Minnesota.
Okay, so Stuart McIntosh sold the business.
He sold the business.
And you went on to continue working with him.
Yes. So it started out being very similar and being a sort of a requirements analysis, how to allow a business user of any kind to write out their spec.
Mm-hmm.
The world kept changing. The internet came along. The web came along. Other products came along. Spreadsheets, 1, 2, 3 was around early on, but only early on. And so through that, our focus kept changing. And there were only 2 of us. This was not a big company. This was he and I.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a traditional programmer. I did punch cards in college.
Mm-hmm.
I have programmed in HyperCard. I've done SGML and XML and a little object-oriented programming, and we just kept changing what we were doing because the tools kept changing and the computers kept changing and what was already out there kept changing. So eventually we were working on sort of a product where people could keep track of their own medical records and do some analysis on it, and maybe text analysis. One doctor told you one thing and another doctor told you a different thing, and you had this test over here and the result was reported in this other thing. And so we worked on that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But over the years, I had 3 children, and he got older, and he had some very major medical issues over the years, and the business slowed down, frankly, and he got older, and it became more of an educational research project than a goal to create a product.
Mm-hmm.
And that was okay with me because it was still really interesting.
Sure, yeah. So as things wound down with working with Stuart, he and you had some discussions, and he indicated that he wanted to do something that would give back.
He knew that he wasn't going to be around forever, and he wanted me to be able to continue to do work that was interesting for me, that had something to do with what we were doing together.
Mm-hmm.
And so we came up together with the mission. He wanted to do a nonprofit, and together we came up with the mission statement of helping non-technical people use technology. And I thought about many things over the years, just mulling it through my mind. I could do a website that people could use. I could make a product, make an app that people could use that would be tutorials, or I could continue on the medical record idea, or eventually I came up with the idea of what SDM Foundation is now. And I got really excited about that, and then when he did pass away in 2015,
Mm-hmm.
it took about a year to clean up the houses and do all the estate work.
Sure.
And then we started in the beginning of 2016, and it took about 6 months to find a place and get it ready, and then we opened in the summer.
Great. I love the mission statement. It is broad, and obviously you had the mission statement before you kind of realized exactly how you're going to fulfill that mission. And do you think do you think a lot of companies start out that way? I would say probably not. It's nice to be able to start with a mission, and then how am I going to meet that challenge?
Right.
And not start with the idea and say, what mission does this accomplish? I do know people that had started a non-for-profit and then looked back to the mission and changed the operations from what they had originally because they didn't do what you did, and you started with the mission. And I think that's probably a fantastic way to start things.
Thank you. I do also think I follow a lot of nonprofit groups, and I do think that one of the problems that some nonprofits have is, like you said, they come up with an idea and then they write that as their mission, and it ends up being too narrow as they grow. And they realize, well, I didn't only want to do this, we actually should do this other thing too, but going back and changing the actual mission of your nonprofit is not the easiest thing to do.
No.
We started with something that was quite broad. I mean, could be realized in many different ways, and we could continue to change. We don't have to do a shop forever, or we can do a shop and something else. And so I think that is one of our strengths.
Terrific. You had your first child while still in
So when we lived in JP, we had two of our 3 kids.
Okay.
Our oldest was 3, and our second was 1.5 when we moved to Melrose.
The school system was obviously something that was important to you. Are there any other factors thinking about coming to?
So definitely we wanted to be in a location where we could get into the city. We always felt there was no sense in living here if you were only in the suburbs. So being on the Orange Line was a big deal. And in fact, my husband took the Orange Line to work for many, many years until his work changed such that he had to drive in. But we really liked the area, how accessible it was. The schools were good, but they're amazing now compared to what they were then. They just get better all the time.
Sure, and you didn't waste too much time getting integrated into the Melrose community, because
No.
I know your husband was on the zoning, or still is on the zoning board of appeals, and you're also were involved with the school system over many years, and are still involved today?
So, no, I was on the school committee for 11 years. I was on PTOs before that, but by the time I finished on the school committee, that was actually the end of 2015, or the end of 2014. So my kids had all graduated by then, and I felt like it was time to let somebody else step up and do that. But we participated in Cub Scouts, and I was the treasurer on Babe Ruth for a while, and our kids played hockey, and so we've been members of the community and the community's groups the whole time we've been.
Yeah, was that very similar to how you grew up in Minnesota there, where was it a tight community like that? Is that what you brought?
I would say no, because the time was so different. So I'm one of 6 kids, 5 girls and a boy, and when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of sports for girls. So we didn't participate in very many organized sports. My younger sisters did more than I did. And parents didn't really drive their kids to everything. And so my family is very, very close, and that's a thing I brought. My mom participated in the PTO and things like that. She was active politically and socially, but not. It was a very different time.
Sure, yeah. Being part of the school committee obviously gave you an opportunity to meet a lot of people in the community.
Yep.
And so flash forward to when you opened the SDM Foundation. Were people surprised? Did they ever, you bump into people, they walked by SDM and said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Or what's the foundation all about?
So definitely people do still say that. They I saw this place but didn't really know what this is. I think it made it much easier to get the word out because I knew so many people. Almost all of the employees at SDM are Melrose people.
Sure.
Not because they have to be, but there's just so many good Melrose people, and so that is makes it really easy to keep expanding our reach because we know people on the Rotary, and they call us up and say, "Will you come and talk to the Rotary?" Or Melrose Alliance Against Violence calls and says, "We have some questions. Can we meet with you?" Knowing people in the community has certainly helped us.
I don't think there could ever be enough people to help other non-technical people fix problems, resolve issues.
Right. I have to say, so many people who come in say, I ask my son or my daughter or my grandchildren, but then, they get tired of helping me, or they say, I already told you that, or they just take my device and they do it, but then I don't learn how to do it myself. So I like to come here once in a while, and then I don't have to call them, and And
Right.
everybody uses what family members or neighbors they have, but it's really nice for them to have somewhere else to ask it.
Yeah, I can understand that. Just to get an idea, anybody can come and if they have an issue, whatever it may be.
Yep.
So it could be, I have a PC, I have a Mac, I have a phone, there's an application I don't know how to use and I would like to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
Really, any one of those,
Anything.
anything.
We will often say, even if we don't know it, we'll learn it by your side if
Right.
that's what it takes. But really anything. I say someone who knows a lot might not know one little thing and they can come in and probably one of our people knows how to do that. Whether they're designing a website or using a phone. I had a gentleman the other day, this was his very first smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was helping him get it set up and he just kept looking at me and saying, how would I do this if you weren't here? How would I do this if you weren't here? And I said, but we are here and so we're gonna get this. And he was smart enough that he knew he wanted to use Uber, but he didn't know how to use his phone or open it up or, get it set up. So it ranges quite a bit.
I imagine though, there's some areas where you have no choice but to juggle on. So for instance, if I
Yes.
took a cup of coffee and I poured it on my laptop.
So we don't do hardware repairs.
I would assume, right.
Although occasionally, and we will say that we don't do virus repairs either,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes people come in and they say, my computer's just really slow, and we'll look at it with you. So we're all about education.
Mm-hmm.
People say, I'll just drop it off and come back. And no, that's not what we do. But
Mhm.
we'll sit down with you and we'll show you, and that is a gray area, but we'll show you what kinds of things we can look at, and if there's a virus, we'll tell you what your options are, and we might be able to help you reinstall Windows or whatever it takes, or we might not, but at least then we'll point you in the direction of someone else.
Okay.
But yes, there are lines.
So I went through your website and I was looking at all the pictures of your staff, and,
Yeah.
and some of them look very young. And maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but I looked at a few of the
Okay.
pictures there, and they looked.
So we don't have anyone younger than high school.
Okay.
We have had high school students, and we do currently have one high school student.
Mm-hmm.
So he would be the youngest one.
Now, is it interesting to you that when presumably you hired this person to help, does it strike you odd that they come in already at that age with a tremendous amount of knowledge enough to help other people? Does that surprise you these days?
So it surprises me sometimes how some young people have such an incredibly gentle manner, how patient they are, what good teachers they are.
Mm-hmm.
That surprises me more than the fact that they can uninstall your email on your phone and reinstall it,
Sure.
or that they can, figure out why you're not getting sound out of your iPad or something like that. That part doesn't surprise me as much. One of the areas that I have an issue with is that people think that young people know about technology and old people don't.
Okay.
I'm 60 years old, but I know as much as most of the people,
Mm-hmm.
if not all of the people, or
Mhm.
most of what they know of the people in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
I think the people who work in the shop are really collaborative, and we ask each other for help all the time. And I think that really shows our clients that you don't necessarily need a 20-year-old to help you do this technology thing. Maybe someone who's a bit older than that will know it as well. But they did grow up with it much more certainly than I did.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've actually been using it more years than they have
Right.
because I'm older. And it's really true that people know what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that we always have to do, everyone comes in being more familiar, for example, with one kind of phone. You either have an iPhone or you have an Android phone.
Right.
And the one you have is the one you know the best.
Mm-hmm.
And so even whether you're old or young, you have to learn the other one, because we're going to have people that have both phones, that have Windows and Macs and Unix, that have, Android tablets and iPads and Kindles. And so we work really hard to learn from each other and learn by using equipment that we're not familiar with, because you never know what's going to come in the door, and you need to be able to do more than just the things you already know.
Sure. So, in terms of the people that come in seeking assistance, do they fall into any category? Do you have kind of more younger, older? Do you have more males than females, or any type of pattern that's emerged that might be interesting?
So we don't keep demographic information, so we don't ask people how old they are. And sometimes we're shocked. Sometimes people tell us and we're shocked. But clearly it skews more toward older. But again, what is older? Is 60 older? Is 70 older? Is 80 older? We've had people in their 90s. It's probably close to split Windows and Macs, because more older people have Macs because they tend to be a little bit easier for people to use. I would say we probably have more iPhone users than Androids, but not 75-25. I mean, it's a little closer to even on that. We get a lot of people trying to organize their pictures, and we get a lot of people who are having email issues.
Sure.
And oh man, if they're on AOL and they're having email issues, that could be quite an issue.
Sure.
Some of the things are so simple, and people just don't know it. A woman came in with her phone and it was all black, and she said, but I have pictures of my granddaughter and I've lost them forever. She turned the light down and she didn't know. And so we showed her how to turn it up. It was like we found her granddaughter. I mean, she was so excited. So, but other things are really hard. We sometimes the person says, I'm sure it's me. I'm sure I did something bad. And we look into it and it's like, this is not you. This is much more than you. So it really varies a lot, but certainly it skews older. And we're open from 9 to 4. So we're open during the day.
Right.
Because the people who are looking for our help are more available in the day. We are getting more and more kids, students. We get some who come on Saturdays. We do special lessons during vacation weeks and over the summer. They want to learn programming, or they want to learn something that they might be able to use in school, or their parents want to learn more about the Google apps because their kids are using them in school. And so that skews a little younger. We're doing more with local businesses and local nonprofits, helping them use Google Suite or work on their website or their Facebook page. So that skews us a little younger. And
Sure.
so it does vary.
Right, yeah, that makes sense, and it's not surprising. And yes, I can see how, maybe some people that are retired, they're home during those hours where some of the kids are at school, so that, that may be the reason skewed. Yeah, so I do, it's one of the things I wanted to mention is that you have a lot of events that are going on a weekly, a monthly, annual basis. Some of them are kind of called shop talks, where you cover a lot of issues. I think that's great. And I assume some of those if they draw a big crowd or some other event, sometimes you have them off-site.
So we don't have shop talks off-site, but we do participate in some off-site education.
Okay.
For example, the Melrose-MA Foundation has a parent university every year, and we have participated in that over the last few years. And there will, for example, we did two sessions there this last time about security for parents, keeping their kids secure and safe in their online world. And that was very popular. And we've met with people in our shop who want to get some additional information and personal information.
Sure, you mentioned that. You mentioned that was a little bit surprising when you had the topic to cover security and keeping devices secure for children. there was an overwhelming response
Right.
to that, right? No, I think there are two concerns that come
Yeah.
out immediately. One, of course, is security and content and locking that down. And for someone that is non-technical, that is kind of a difficult thing to do, because there's many ways to lock down devices for children, although you need to leave them open to get educational materials. A lot of the schools now are asking the students to do things online. So you have things like your router, you can filter out content through a router, you can set up times at which devices can access the web, but then there's a whole list of options on the device itself a lot of the times with the phone, so you can lock it down that way.
Well, and it really changes so quickly. The operating system on the phones changes, and then your options change, and there's new software all the time, and your kid is growing up at the same time.
Sure.
So what you did when they were in 5th grade and what you do when they're in 7th grade don't even look that much alike.
Sure.
And so each person really needs something different. One person really wants to lock that phone all the way down, and the other person says, they really need to learn to be responsible, but I need to be able to check and make sure. Those are very different requirements. And like you said, the schools are using Google Docs and Google Drives and Google Classroom all the time. You can't lock them down so they can't do their homework.
Right.
And their homework is online. Well, if they can get online to do their homework, they're pretty smart. They can get online to chat in a Google Doc too.
If there was one area that parents focused on a little bit more than the other, would you say it was more about content filtering versus duration, use and duration of the devices? So how long my child is using their device?
I would actually say it's about their use of social media.
Is it time of use?
It is.
Or is it...
It's time and the concern about bullying and things like that. So certainly it's time. It's if you feel like your child is becoming addicted to their device, that's worrisome. Or they're playing video games and not doing homework. Or those are worrisome things. I think that less people are worried that their kids are surfing bad websites than are worried about the more personal things that they're doing or sharing that they need to learn not to.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, of course, you don't want your child to be alienated, but of course, you want to protect them as well. It becomes, I really have to hand it to the parents that have children of that age right now. It's and I don't think the technology has yet caught up.
Right.
There are certainly tools that will help you do it.
Yes, there are.
But it's not there yet, because I think that whole area is still at its infancy.
Yes.
And probably in 10 years from now, they'll have tools that you do not need as much hand-holding to enable as you do today. And would you say that you think that might be a correct assumption?
The only problem with that assumption is that everything's changing. There's going to be different apps. It's the rate of change is so fast that the minute one thing gets understood and locked down, they're off to something else.
Sure.
So yes, I think tools have to help a parent are so far ahead of where they were 5 years ago, 3 years ago. So of course I think that is going to continue. But it's always going to be difficult, and you're going to have to trust that your kids are also wanting to be good citizens, because you're never going to be able to watch everything they do.
Sure. And aside from that, I mean, that's one hot issue. Of course, these shop talks also focus on other kind of whatever the issue is at the time, or whatever do you call them clients or members, the people that come in?
We call them clients.
Clients, okay.
And so our shop talks are very conversational. So sometimes it will be one of the associates, and sometimes it will be an invited guest. And it will be a topic that we think people might want to talk about. Our most popular shop talk, which we have multiple times, is about how to stream television content.
Oh, really?
How to cut the cable. People want to come and
okay.
talk about that. Every 6 months we must do that one, and it's very popular.
You know what? I can understand why that's popular. A lot of people don't know that you can access digital TV, a digital TV signal from the airwaves. You don't necessarily need cable. You can actually get an antenna and obtain pretty high quality, isn't it? You can get HD and maybe even 4K.
For your local channels.
For your local channels.
Right.
Which is terrific. And that in conjunction with internet access sometimes is probably enough for people.
It all depends on what it is you watch and what you want, how many choices you want.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a big sports person and you have to, and you also like movies, and so now you're doing Netflix and you're doing, you know, MLB World Pass or whatever it's called, and you're buying it, and sometimes it ends up being as much as the cable was, but other times it's not. It really, really depends on what the person wants access to.
Now, do you see a lot of people cutting the cord or having the desire to cut the cord?
Oh yeah, I think you know, nationwide that's a big thing, but also because of that, the whole structure of fees is changing because people are going to make money one place or the other, and so it's becoming more expensive to buy those other individual feeds. But you know, and if you get internet only and you don't get internet and TV, if you don't do the, you know, triple play bundle, then your internet costs almost as much as your internet with your TV did. So
the shop talks are great, and it seems like it's driven based off of what people want to, you know, talk about.
Yes, when you get 4 or 5 people and they're all talking about their own experiences, say online banking, you really can share a lot of information.
Sure.
And we have such generous local businesses. Hunt's Camera comes and runs them for us sometimes about digital photography, and Eastern Bank will send someone over and talk about online banking, and so we've had some really nice conversations.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure, you know, the banking must be interesting too, because I would imagine that some of that conversation had to do with how to avoid being kind of scammed or phishing attacks and stuff like that. So
I also have to say, I would say we get probably an average of 2 or 3 people a week who come in who have fallen for the scam, where something pops up on their computer or somebody calls and says, this is Microsoft and you have a virus and we need to get access to your computer and get rid of the virus, and they, you know, we must do it right this second, and do not shut your computer down, and they do, and then they say, okay, now you owe me $300, and you know, so you have to, you know, hold up your check to the camera because I can only take a payment that way, and it's just heartbreaking to say you've been scammed.
Yeah.
And mostly all they're going for is the $300, but you've given them access to your computer, so who knows what they put on it. So we'll help them look around and see if there's, you know, anything malicious on their computer and get rid of it if there is. But so many people fall for that. It's really sad.
Yeah, right. I think the one that almost caught my attention was just, you know, I use Office 365 for my business, and it said I had a fax, an electronic fax, which sometimes, and I'll tell you, I came very close to clicking it. I didn't, but it did look, it was the only one in a long time that looked legitimate. And
but the ones that the English is bad are pretty obvious, but their English is getting better, and it's so easy to cut and paste other people's logos that you can copy the whole email from a real email, and so it looks real. So we always tell people the first thing you do is just hover over the from and see who it's really from, because 99% of the time you're going to be able to see that it is not from, it's from something Microsoft dot something else dot something, you know.
Sure. So, and you know, I guess that's one thing that kind of bothers me about some of the technology today. You know, to make it easier, they limit information. So, you know, on an Android or sometimes even an iPhone, when someone sends you an email, it shows you their nickname or their name that is associated. But, you know, I had to click 3 or 4 times to see what is the actual email address. And sometimes that's just the reply address. That's not necessarily the email address that sends you it. So to get access to that information in order to make it easier, they've kind of limited that information. So on a desktop computer, you can kind of see that detailed information, the path, the IP address,
It is
the server.
easier. It's much bigger.
Right.
A much bigger screen.
But on a phone, I just saw a name. And I eventually got to the email address, but they certainly didn't make it, easy to find.
And we always say, don't call the phone number on the email. Go look it up separately in a completely different window.
Sure.
And then call that number and see if it's real.
You're almost at capacity right now.
Yep.
So we talked before, and you were mentioning that you were looking for other ways to continue to provide services that don't require space and capacity at your location. And I think you've already kind of made some good headway on that. I noticed you had a lot of materials on your website that shows a lot of tools, utilities, information. And what other items could they find?
So we're working really hard on our website, and in the next several months you'll see a lot of changes to it. Okay. We're using it as our hub for our information. We're also using Pinterest and Facebook. And we're gonna get into more YouTube videos. I think we have 3. So we're gonna do more regular blogging and more targeted blogging. We do blogging, but we really need the hub to be where people go. So if you want to learn something about email, whether you're having an issue or not, you can go to email and see all the different information, whether it was our newsletter or a blog post or a YouTube video or some articles that we've pinned. It'll all be collected together on the web, on our website, in a useful and easy to read place.
Sure.
So that's our plan, and we're getting started, and you'll see a lot of change over the next few months. So then we can reach people who can't come to the shop or don't need to come to the shop for this little thing or to try something or
So for people that have not been to your shop, you're at 465 Main Street. You're directly across from Diamici's Bakery.
Yes.
And what are some of the stores adjacent to your?
So Mexico Lindo is just south of us, and the Y is the block north of us.
Okay.
On our side of the street. We're right on a bus route. We get people up from Malden or down from Wakefield. We actually get people from much further away than that, but we get a lot of people who take the bus or who take the ride. And so to be so accessible is really important to us, and that's really good. We didn't used to be open on Saturdays, and a community member said, you're right in the middle of Main Street, and you should have your door open on Saturdays. And I thought about that, and I thought, we should be responsive. And yes, it does look better when we're open. And so we're open on Saturday mornings. And at first it was pretty slow, and and now we're packed on Saturday mornings.
Wow.
And it's like, so Melrose is pretty easy to do business with. It was a little confusing. I'd never started a business before. So to make sure I, got the sign the right size, and I designed a logo for our window that was too big, and
I've heard that. I've heard that you're not the only one that said this. I've heard this from others that there are some very specific guidelines and rules that you need to adhere to in order.
And you might think that because I am married to someone who knows all sorts of those rules, but it was confusing. But I also knew so many people in town, not that I got preferential treatment, but I knew who to ask. And so I figured it out, and we got things that we liked and that the city liked. And I think we're a really nice asset in the city. And I love walking to work. I have to say, that's quality of life. It's good.
Well, you had mentioned that this has been a very happy time in your life, that this has brought you a lot of joy in your life. It was certainly transitioned from what you were doing before. Is that, why is that? Is that because, you feel as if you're giving back? Is it because it involves more interaction with people? Is it all of the above? Well, what do you think? And, I guess maybe as advice or recommendation for anyone to find additional happiness.
It is all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I worked with Stuart separately, independently for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And often he was the only person I saw during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing so many more people is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Helping people, they're so appreciative. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people they just are so appreciative. I mean, who wouldn't like that?
Sure.
I love getting out and walking to work every day and walking home. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that getting a little more exercise in such an easy way, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I've hired incredible people. I like being the boss. That's good too.
But what I find it interesting is that, running the non-for-profit is a lot of work, but you're also still helping people. I found, I was actually surprised to learn about that because I thought the majority of your time would be, making sure the lights are on, paying the bills, but then you're also hands-on, literally helping people, and I'm sure that goes into it, right?
Yeah, and that's really important to me. I need that part.
Mm-hmm.
I have a business degree, so the business part of it
Mm-hmm.
is interesting, and I love doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
but if it took all my time, that would
Sure.
not be nearly as pleasant for me
Sure.
as being able to actually interact with the clients and work closely with the other associates there.
Yeah, so it kind of falls in line with what this channel is about, is talking about community
Mm-hmm.
and advocating community. You were in a part of your life that although you enjoyed it, it was isolating,
Mm-hmm.
and now you've transitioned to a job that is very much the opposite.
Right.
It's literally in the community. You have multiple community of the community of your workforce, which
Mm-hmm.
are lovely people, everyone that I've met. And then you have community members coming in to your shop, and you're able to help them.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of interesting that the parallels between anybody suffering from any problem in their lives, whatever it is that a lot of the answer to that problem, whether it might be addiction or drug or any type of issue, is being part of community, interacting with people. And, I think this is a real living, breathing example of that.
Yeah.
Like, would your family also say that they've seen a change
Oh,
in
yes.
you day to day? How would they
Yeah,
describe
so it was all kind of everything at the same time. Everything changed at the same time.
Mhm.
So our kids grew up, graduated from Melrose High, went to college, graduated from college. They were off starting to do their own things.
that?
I finished on the school committee. 11 years is a long time to be on the school committee. It's a really great job, and it's really, really important, and it's really stressful, and it's really, you don't always see the best of people.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've seen some of the videos online, and it can get somewhat contentious in some of those meetings.
yes, people feel very strongly about their
Sure.
schools, as they should.
Right.
And so that was all of that, and Stuart passed away all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly I had this other thing to do
Mm-hmm.
that was really reasonable hours and really pleasant, and
Sure.
everybody liked it, and they love to come, and they love to get help, and I love to give it, and I'm good at it. And it was like, whoa. So yes, my family would absolutely say this is the time of my life.
Now, I assume, do you host a lot of the holiday events?
We do.
So
yes.
what was the next holiday event after all of these transitions had occurred? Was it like a Thanksgiving or a different, Christmas or
So
Hanukkah?
probably Christmas.
Christmas.
Probably.
Okay. Was it unmistakable when your children came back to visit for the holidays? Was it immediately apparent to them?
So I think it was immediately apparent to them even before
Even
that,
before.
because we talk a lot, and they could just see. I mean, I really think.
So your children are quite accomplished in their own right. I mean, so
They are.
they've gone on to college and some graduate school, and
Yes.
so what is the rundown of?
So one of my kids lives in town. He's in Somerville,
Mhm.
and he graduated from Northeastern
Mhm.
mechanical engineering. He has a great job. He just got married this last summer.
Congratulations.
We love our daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
I have a son in Chicago, married, has a little boy who's going to be one
Okay.
very soon. He got his PhD and has a fabulous job, and she has a fabulous job.
Mhm.
And our daughter is out in Salt Lake City doing her in grad school, and she's doing great. So they're all happy with what they're doing.
Mhm.
And for a while, our son who lives here lived in Minneapolis, so we didn't have anybody here for a while.
Okay.
So we really loved that they came back, and
Your children that
we're
are
hoping
away.
the other ones will come back too. But
Your children that are away, do they miss Melrose? Or do they come back? Do they get sent?
they come back quite a bit.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
They come back.
And what do they think of your shop when
They love it. They love
Do they
that
hang
I'm
out there
doing
sometimes?
it. They do come in and
Yeah.
say hello. And
Are they ever going to host
follow
a shop talk? I'm sure they have something very interesting.
I
share
would
someday.
have to figure out how to schedule that.
Now, do you have any kind of interesting stories about, not naming any names, but is there something that's been a little bit comical maybe about something, oh, you forgot to plug it in, or turn it off and turn it back on again?
There is a lot of that. And turn it off, turn it back on again. It fixes 30% of the problems right there.
Is that how you answer the phone?
Wait.
Yeah. Have you turned it off? Turn it back on again? Is that?
It's really hard to help people on the phone. We do try sometimes, and from what they say they're looking at and what you actually later find out they were looking at is not at all the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
People, I just don't want to make fun of anyone,
No.
but we do often.
Well, listen, there's I do things that if someone were watching, they would be on the, laughing on the floor.
Yeah.
So I,
People with iPhones will often turn off the sound with the little flick on the side and not know it.
Mm-hmm.
Or they won't understand. It really is about not understanding.
Sure.
So we have a lot of people who tell us they've never had a password for their email.
Mm-hmm.
I never had one. It says enter my password, but I never had a password.
Right.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that to us seem so obvious,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like I was telling the gentleman with his new phone. I said, think about if somebody handed you a Star Trek tricorder and said, here, go out in the world. I mean, it isn't intuitive.
Sure.
And people
Sure.
say, oh, it's so intuitive. It's not intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's all learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just have to learn what it expects of you, because it's not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
I say computers are too dumb. They only do what someone told them to do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know enough to do something different.
Not until we get quantum computing.
That's right.
And
AI.
and then
yeah,
AI
Yeah.
in conjunction with that. And
but
then,
we're not there yet.
and then we're all doomed.
Right.
We'll have, Cybernet
Yeah.
coming after us. So do we want to do the end of the
Sure.
interview questions?
Yep.
I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
Thank
here,
you. I'm
but,
enjoying it.
I know since you are in the community, some of these questions are a little bit loaded. I don't know if you'll
Okay.
actually be able to answer them without getting in hot water
All right.
somewhere else. But my first question is, what is your favorite local business in Melrose?
And I won't answer that one
No,
because
you-
I love Melrose. I love downtown Melrose. I love the shops on West Emerson. I love them all. I love some of the restaurants. I go to Turner's regularly. I go to Mexico Lindo. I get pizza at Camella's. I love them all. We're in Diamici's at least several times a week. I mean, we got a bathroom done, and I was at the Y every day showering for several months. So I just think we're so fortunate to have such a great mix of businesses. I'm sorry that some of them have had to leave, but I'm excited to see what comes in their places.
Sure. Okay. We'll give you a pass on that.
Okay, thanks.
What would you most love to see in Melrose in the future?
So that's interesting because we do have some change happening and seeing what happens in those places. It's hard to imagine too many restaurants, but that would, they would start competing with each other. I think any business that encourages people to come in and walk down the street and participates. We have a great community that does things like the art walk, where we all put artwork in our windows and people come down, and the Victorian Fair, and any kind of business that participates in things like that is a good thing for me to see.
What would you love to improve about Melrose?
No, I think Melrose is making very good incremental changes, and I think that's really important. I wish we had more parking downtown. I wish we could keep up with the streets a little better and the infrastructure a little better. But we're doing what we can with the money that we have available, and I have to say we just have to keep incrementally improving.
What is your favorite scenic spot in Melrose?
So I really love when you walk down Main Street and look out over L Pond. That's one of my favorite views. I like that one.
Okay. It's been a pleasure
Thank
speaking
you.
with you. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Your address is
465 Main Street. Our number is 781-606-2621. www.sdmfoundation.net. Stop in, say hello, give us a call. We'd love to see anyone.
fantastic.
Thank you.
We'll put the information in the description as well, and with links and URLs and all of that. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
All right.